Police academies all across this country never address the oath of office. Yet every single cop has to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. Why don't we examine what the role of law enforcement, of sheriffs, of chiefs of police, what is our role in the protection of the American Republic, of our constitutional republic? The ultimate goal of all three branches of government, and we're the executive branch, we're the executors of the law, is to protect liberty. And if we have to do that against the FBI or the IRS or the EPA or the CDC or the USDA, then that's our job. Sheriffs, let's do our duty and protect the people from all enemies, both foreign and domestic, as we've promised to do, and save our country. We have the power. If the sheriffs of this country will just unite and be unified in keeping their oath of office and defending the American people against oppression and abuse of government, we could take back our country tomorrow.
America, in case you haven't noticed, we are at a crossroads. That's right. We are standing at a big, wide fork in the road. Good afternoon, Patriots. This is Steel News. I'm Ann Vandersteel, and tonight we're going to be talking about local power done lawfully. Not slogans, not theatrics, true structure. The Supreme Court has said that the federal government cannot commandeer your local police, your cops, your citizens on patrol, right? Your state constitutions recognize state authority over training and officers, and federal law gives states explicit room to organize state defense forces for in-state emergencies. Translation: counties and states have tools if we choose to use them. My guest is former Graham County, Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack, best known for challenging the Brady Bill mandates and winning in the Supreme Court level and the Printz line of cases for pushing sheriffs to ground their work in the Constitution and not politics. How refreshing. We are going to be going into where authority starts and stops, how to build local capacity lawfully, how to protect civil rights while protecting communities. And today we're looking at a Department of Justice seemingly in collapse. The question is, how do we achieve accountability? Will we actually see the return of constitutional justice? The Department of Justice, once revered as the highest guardian of law and order, is unraveling. Thousands of attorneys have fled the DOJ since early 2025, citing political interference, collapsing morale, and a system they no longer recognize as just. Could it be the swamp doesn't like President Trump? I don't know. We'll see. Cases are falling apart. Divisions like civil rights have been gutted, and across the country, even judges are asking the question, has the DOJ lost its way? You think? But maybe, just maybe, this isn't a total collapse. Maybe it's a reckoning. When the centralized institutions of justice fail, the Constitution provides a remedy, not through new laws or agencies, but through the people themselves. The Fifth Amendment enshrines the power of the grand jury, not as a government tool, but as a citizen's weapon against tyranny. And today's guest knows that truth better than most. Sheriff Richard Mack is not just a lawman, he's a constitutional warrior. After serving over a decade with the Provo Police Department, he returned to his roots in Arizona, where he was elected sheriff of Graham County in 1988. And when the federal government tried to force sheriffs to carry out unconstitutional mandates under the Brady Bill, Sheriff Mack stood his ground and he won. In 97, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in his favor in a 5-4 landmark decision affirming the 10th Amendment and the sovereignty of local law enforcement over federal intrusion. Sheriff Mack proved that the Constitution still works if we have the courage to stand on it. As the founder of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, Sheriff Mack has spent decades teaching Americans that the true guardians of justice are not the bureaucrats in D.C., but the sheriffs and the citizens of this republic who understand their duty before God and the Constitution. So as the DOJ implodes and thousands of lawyers abandon ship, perhaps the real story is not the collapse of justice, but its return to where it began, in the hands of the people. Sheriff Mack joins us right now to discuss this and much more, citizen grand juries, and how the people, not politicians, can restore lawful order in America. Sheriff Mack, welcome as always. It is great to see you. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If I could get you on the stage, I'm not sure why it won't let me get you on the stage. There you are. I've got you on the stage now.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, Richard. Good to see you. How have you been?
Really good. Thank you. But wait, first of all, I got to stop you right there.
What?
That was absolutely the best introduction I've ever had.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's coming from you who's done a ton of podcasts. That's high praise. I'll take it.
You nailed it. You nailed every bit of that. And by the way, I don't have a copy of that beginning video of me. I need
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I need that really badly because I'm working with some law enforcement that need that 1 minute.
Got it.
Yeah. And so, yes.
I'll send it in email as soon as we're done here.
All right, good, great. But I'm not kidding you. I was enthralled listening to you right now. You nailed it right on the head. Exactly what I did, exactly why I did it. Wow. I was saying to myself, man, Anna's really good. I knew you were good, but man, I was just saying it over and over.
This is not about me, Sheriff Mack. This is about you.
But you made it perfect where everybody got it. And
well, good. Wow. I'm glad. So let's help them get it some more here, because there's so few people that actually truly embrace the Constitution. They get it. They're still upholding their oath of office. I mean, we proved several years ago through Freedom of Information Acts that nobody in the Biden cabinet nor Kamala Harris, including the federal judges in D.C., U.S. attorneys, they didn't have their oath of office properly filed or was non-existent. So there's two parts, there's 5 U.S.C. 3331 where you put your hand on the Bible and swear. There's 53332 where you have to sign this. And the 3332 was deficient, defunct, or missing altogether, as in the case of Lloyd Austin, former Secretary of War, as it is now. But let's start with some of these principles, because when you say constitutional sheriff, define precisely what you will do under your oath and what you won't do if an order conflicts with state or federal constitutions.
Well, yeah, that's really where the boots hit the pavement. And that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Well, let's look at the opposite view first. Could you imagine that there's police and sheriffs in this country that will actually enforce unconstitutional and unjust laws? Why would anybody do that? Well, for anyone to say that is absolutely absurd. Martin Luther King, when he was illegally arrested and was sitting in the Birmingham County Jail, wrote a letter, and his dissertation was very short, but it was powerful as hell. And this is what he said. And I'm not quoting exactly, but this is what he said, pretty close word for word. He said, we all have a moral and lawful responsibility to obey just laws.
Right.
Conversely, he said, we all have a moral and legal responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Now, if the American people have a moral and lawful responsibility to disobey unjust laws, where does that put the nation's police officers and sheriffs? At the same place. Right. We have no responsibility whatsoever, morally or lawfully, to enforce an unjust law. And then the question after that, police are going to ask both of you and me, well, then who decides what's unjust? You do.
That's right. The people. And that's
You
that's what I love about this case, that you won, the only sheriff to go to the Supreme Court and win. In this case, Printz told Washington it can't conscript local officers for federal programs. So, again, this is what you're talking about right now. This really means we've got to get cooperation by the people on the ground versus commandeering by the federal government. And right
Correct.
now, President Trump is actually taking some serious incoming over this with respect to the Trump administration urging the Supreme Court to actually allow National Guard deployment across states. Define the difference between what he's trying to do and when the federal government steps in and engages in law enforcement that the sheriffs should be facilitating. Can you sort of break that, separate those two things? Because I think they get conflated.
Well, they do. And the question is, if the local sheriff refuses, and if the chief of police refuses, and the mayor refuses, and the governor refuses, then can the federal government step in lawfully and constitutionally? And according to my Supreme Court case, let me quote one little thing from it.
Okay.
Scalia quotes Federalist 51. And it's in my decision. This is it. This is the Printz Mack decision. Now, you mentioned Printz. Printz was the other sheriff that went with me to the Supreme Court. His name got attached to the case more actually than mine, even though I was the first to file.
Right.
His case was actually the first to be heard at the district court level because Helena, Montana, where he lived, their court calendar wasn't very full. And even though he filed about 5 or 6 weeks after I did, he went and heard. And I didn't know this for the longest time. I even asked him, I said, why's your name on the case? I was the first to file. And he goes, I had nothing to do with that. And then a lawyer told me and explained it to me. It depends on who was the first one heard. But he and I were consolidated at the circuit court because we both live in the Ninth Circuit. And it was the Mack Printz case at that time. And so that's where I just kept it the Mack Printz case, because it really was. We both were at the Supreme Court in December of 1996, where at that time it was the Mack Printz case. And then for some reason, my name got taken off. They should have left it Mack Printz. But regardless, I was the one that started this. And I am so proud and pleased as hell that the other 6 sheriffs joined me in this, because it wouldn't have made it to the Supreme Court if they hadn't.
Right.
And so because it ended up that we had 2 different courts hearing these cases at the circuit level that ruled just the opposite. And so we had conflicting circuit court rulings on the same exact case, and which forced the Supreme Court to decide. And They did. And thank goodness, it was very historical. But in Federalist 51, in this case, it says, hence a double security arises to the rights of the people. Well, pause for a minute and say, well, how does that happen? Because, quoting again, the different governments will control each other. Now, when local governments refuse to protect life, liberty, and property,
right,
the federal government can, and according to this, should step in.
Right.
But the sheriff in every one of those locations is doing nothing. Sheriff Dart in Chicago, doing nothing. Cook County. Sheriff O'Donnell in Multnomah County, where Portland is located, doing nothing. Los Angeles County Sheriff Luna is doing nothing and standing there. Each sheriff in those jurisdictions and all across the country should be going to the chief of police and the mayor. If you're not going to do it, I will.
Right.
If I don't have enough resources, I will call in whatever resource from the federal government that I need to protect the people in this county, because you're refusing to.
So I want to bring this back to we the people, because again, we the people elect our sheriffs that are supposed to uphold the Constitution.
Correct.
So in the regard when it comes to looking at state regulated forces and the lawful local capacity thereof, the Constitution's Second Amendment militia clauses reserves to the states the appointment of officers and the authority of training, and federal law lets governors organize state defense forces that can't be federalized. So where do the sheriffs fit in? What's an appropriate lawful partnership between a county sheriff and a state defense force, aka a militia, a well-regulated militia where they have meetings and minutes and everything is posted to the governor and he knows exactly what they're doing. That kind of militia.
Well, I liked it when I was sheriff. When I sued the federal government, the local militia contacted me and said, we're here to help you in any way.
Awesome.
Because they really feared that my lawsuit was going to bring some federal resistance.
Okay.
And so I said, great, thank you. But wouldn't it be wonderful if every sheriff had a militia? Let's change the word. Posse, which is a militia. It's made of the people. And Sheriff Arpaio had 2,500 on his posse. I had about 150 on mine. And there's lots of sheriffs with posses. In fact, does everybody know that every sheriff in this country, just about every sheriff, has a volunteer search and rescue squad?
Right.
That is a militia. It's a posse. And no matter what they're performing, it's up to the sheriff to work with them, and it's up to them to work with the sheriff. And the sheriff can have his own posse, and they can be trained however the sheriff wants. And if there's an eventuality that is some sort of natural disaster, the sheriff can call out his Minuteman posse to help the community. And in Arizona, the law is the sheriff can require the people and call out every able-bodied citizen to help him what? Keep the peace.
Keep the peace.
And enforce
right.
the law. That's
All
what
right.
posses and militias are for.
So this is where I'm going to where we have an issue right now in elections. Elections clearly are a flashpoint in this country. And under state law, what can sheriffs actually lawfully do to secure chain of custody or evidence without crossing into what's known as voter intimidation? Give us the do's and the don'ts.
Well, sheriffs providing security at voting polls, I don't believe should scare or intimidate anybody. But
they're peace officers. They're there to keep the peace.
Of course. Absolutely. Right. And requiring ID is not racist. It's appropriate.
Yeah.
But the sheriff should verify how the votes are being tabulated, because those are usually by somebody in the county. The county recorder in most counties is in charge of the election. And some counties appoint a specific, bureaucrat, hate to say that name, but a bureaucrat to be in charge of the elections. If it's not the county recorder, then they appoint someone else. But in my particular county, it was the county recorder. I have a duty to make sure that those ballots are being counted appropriately and honestly. Mm-hmm. And so every sheriff has the same. If someone comes to you and says, like just happened a week ago in Arizona, that they tabulated the votes and announced the results before the lines everybody was voting. Right. The lines were still there, and they were in line before 7:00. So they're not allowed to stop it. And so if somebody had complained to the sheriff, of course he has a responsibility to investigate that. For heaven's sakes, he's in charge of that.
That's right. It's protecting your civil rights, for goodness sakes. You have a right to vote. Yeah. Speaking of civil rights, the IRS loves to infringe upon your civil rights on a regular basis. And that 1-minute clip I showed, you talked about standing in the gap against or to protect people from the overreach of tyranny coming from various 3-letter agencies, including the IRS. So with respect to civil asset forfeiture, something the IRS loves to do, and I've been reporting on how the IRS is fabricating 1040s ostensibly to steal your property. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand with respect to civil asset forfeiture, and what policy would you sign that protects due process while allowing crime fighting?
Well, first, every sheriff should put the IRS on notice that they don't come into their counties without checking with the sheriff first.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Every sheriff should be doing that. Why? Because he knows the IRS violates the rights of the people, and he wants to make sure that they don't.
Yeah. Okay? Starting with the Fifth Amendment, that violation right there. Your right to self-incrimination is handed over every time you sign a 1040. You've just forfeited that right to due process.
But look, and he's not telling them they can't come in. He's just telling them They have to check with him first, and
Yeah.
he wants to know what they're doing.
Right.
But the law, but let's be real. The IRS has very little to no authority in the states, and they to exist in the first place.
Right.
They had absolutely no authority.
Exactly.
So, and Congress had no authority to establish an IRS in 1913.
It wasn't properly ratified. That has been proven,
Correct.
and I'm going to break that down here soon.
But this is the deal. The IRS has proven for over 100 years that freedom and that organization cannot coexist. And the real victim of the IRS has been American liberty.
Right.
And so all of us have a responsibility to make sure that stops. My first plea is to President Trump. Get with Mike Johnson and abolish the IRS. We deserve that. And if you're really going to make America great again, you have to do that. You have to do that.
Yeah.
And so please, President Trump, relieve us of this horrible, bullying, criminal organization. Make the tax code simple and constitutional, and there won't be any problem with doing that at all.
That's right. A direct tax is easy, like a sales tax, This
Direct
indirect
and simple.
Yep,
Yeah.
direct and simple, direct and simple. All right, I want to turn our focus onto the DOJ crisis because we really haven't seen. We're getting a lot of posturing. Tulsi Gabbard, in my opinion, has done a great job. She served up filet mignon.
I like her.
I like Tulsi. But we're not seeing out of Pam what we need to over there at the DOJ, Pam Bondi. So we're also seeing reports that there's thousands of DOJ attorneys who have quit since early 2025. What is your understanding of what's driving those mass exoduses, and how does the loss of this sort of institutional knowledge, whatever you want to label that as, at the DOJ actually affect federal prosecutions, civil rights enforcements, and national security cases? Does it affect anything at all? Can we lay that at the feet of the sheriffs to manage, or is there some significance to the DOJ that I'm missing?
Well, sheriffs do need to be more active, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And just like in the minute video that you showed of me, very powerful. I forgot that I even did that until you showed it, because
I loved it. It was like, bam, that's it. That's Sheriff Mack, my hero. Go.
Yeah, but every bit of it was true.
Yeah, it's so true.
I mean, every word I said in that video was absolutely true. And so, folks, if we're going to take America back, if we're going to restore our Constitution, if we're going to restore civil rights, it's the duty of your sheriff to protect the civil rights of every citizen. And civil right, and that's for everyone. There's no exemptions. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care if you're not a religion. Okay? Your rights, your God-given rights, must be protected by all three branches of government and every single person in government. That's our job. And what I said in that video, the ultimate responsibility of all American government is to protect the rights of the people. If we refuse to do that and we become part of the problem,
right,
then wow, do we have a problem. And again, sheriffs are there to remedy that kind of problem, whether it comes from state or federal government.
Yeah.
And so put all federal and state agencies on notice to check with you before they do anything in your county.
Right.
Okay.
I love it.
What's so hard about that?
It's not hard, but there's so many reports of politicization, moral collapse. When I look at this DOJ, I have to ask myself, is it actually, is the DOJ effectively becoming a political weapon instead of a neutral enforcer of justice? And from where I'm sitting with, DOJ under Garland, it was definitely a political weapon. Heck, they had to create a whole weaponization of government in the DOJ, headed up by Ed Martin, who's also running the pardon stuff. Yeah. Ed's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, was this an engineered crisis or organic? Is this a natural result of corruption, exposure, or are we actually deliberately hollowing out our own justice system to replace these career professionals with loyalists? I mean, what is really happening at that DOJ, and should we just abolish it along with the other three letter agencies?
I don't think we need to abolish the DOJ, but I would have said abolish the FBI.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say, of course, abolish the IRS. Do we lawfully have a right to, I guess that's a right, or a duty or a power to have a federal law enforcement? Yes. Does it go as extensively as they're applying it? No. So let's review this real quickly. What are the 5 law enforcement powers delegated by the states? Let's not forget that historical fact.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the intent of the Constitution, the intent of the founders, and the intent of the states was to form a new central government with very limited, discrete, and enumerated powers.
Right.
They do not even exceed 40. Okay?
Nope.
Go through the Constitution and enumerate them. In other words, number them, list them, and you won't even find 40. However, okay, let's say 40. Now, how many of those were law enforcement powers? Let's name them right now. We're going to enumerate them right now on your show. Treason. That is a federal offense.
Right.
Second, counterfeiting. That's a federal offense. Felonies committed on the high seas. That's federal. You don't have the states running around patrolling the high seas. That's a federal responsibility. 4, securing our borders, protecting the state borders, protecting our borders from invasion.
That's right.
That's
Article 4,
required
Section
by law.
4. I know that one well.
Article 4, Section 4. And
Yeah.
then 5 violations of treaties. That
Right.
doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen. So those 5 law enforcement powers belong to the federal government, not solely to the federal government, but they do have those powers. So can they require the states to help them? No, but they can ask them, and they can ask the sheriffs, hey, we're coming in to investigate one of your citizens on counterfeiting. Can you please help us go to his home?
Right.
That's what they should be doing anyway. And I told them they have to check with me anyway. So yes. And Sheriff Dave Mattis in Bighorn County, Wyoming was the first one to implement that back in the 90s. God rest his soul and God bless him for the constitutional sheriff that he was.
So there's judges that are saying the DOJ's new lawyers, the ones they can find, are obviously wrong in arguments, right? This, I think, really just impacts the rule of law and the credibility of the federal court system. I just, especially when you've got federal judges that are legislating from the bench. I mean, just look at J6.
Well,
There was zero law.
Yeah, judges
right
are one to talk. You know, they're
exactly.
They're part of the problem most of the time.
Absolutely. So my question for you is, if we have this massive breakdown in legal competence, is this basically opening the door for citizen-led oversight and accountability efforts, i.e. the role of citizen grand juries? Because you've spoken about citizen grand juries as constitutional mechanisms for oversight when government fails. So how do you see that concept applying here?
Well, it applies greatly because the county attorneys and DAs and prosecutors have completely bastardized grand juries.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, they hold, now get this, you already know it, but I want everybody to get this.
Right.
Okay, so there's a grand jury, right? And the DA or the county attorney, the prosecutor, is in charge of setting it up. I don't mind them setting it up. But you know what they do? They don't allow the accused to participate.
Right.
Are you kidding? They don't allow the accused to participate in front of the grand jury. Are you totally out of your minds? That's the purpose.
That's called railroading. That's railroading.
The accused.
That's right. You have a right.
And so you know why now, and I can't remember his name, but I do remember his position. The chief, it's not chief, it's the head judge of the Supreme Court. So what's that?
Roberts.
The chief judge.
Chief Justice.
But for the state of New York.
Oh, New York. Okay.
So several decades ago, he said, this is why you can indict a ham sandwich. Yeah. And that's what he said, indict a ham sandwich. Because he was talking about how prosecutors across the country have completely destroyed the grand jury system and its intended purpose. And that was to see if someone has enough evidence against them, the accused has enough evidence against them to go to trial. How is the jury going to do that and only listening to one side, the prosecutor?
Right. So historically, grand juries were independent of the state. And, the modern federal system has illegally co-opted, I think,
But
that process.
let me interrupt you. The jury, in any case, is independent of the
Right.
state and the judge.
And the judge. They have more power than the judge. That's
Of
the other
course.
thing that the grand juries and the juries don't know. They have more power than the judge. Remember, the judge sends them out to come up with a verdict.
Right.
It's, in a jury trial, which is what we are woefully missing in the child protective system and family law. There is no jury of your peers. There's just hearsay and railroading in a closed system of people that all profit off the pain of family separations. So citizen grand juries, are you saying then that they actually should become the parallel justice mechanism, not in opposition to government, but to restore lawful due process where, I don't know, the DOJ and the local states have abdicated this responsibility?
Of course, Ann. But this is the thing. I don't see I wasn't going to say reasonable. It doesn't have to be necessarily reasonable. It just has to be constitutional. It has to be freedom oriented. But
Right.
How are we going to work that to take that away or get judges and sheriffs and county attorneys who are all elected to understand the magnitude of the problem here, to where they either take that away from the county attorney and appoint citizens to take over completely, or have the county attorney be honest in the application of his job and and go ahead, call. I don't care if he calls them out, call out the grand jury, but just tell him you're independent and you are to hear both sides of this case before we take it to trial. And so it remains independent and fair and honest to the accused. How do we do that?
It's a great question because, when you start talking about these citizen efforts, right, immediately they run to their de facto favorite FBI created label of sovereign citizen. Well, if you look up the definition of sovereign and citizen, that's an oxymoron. You can't be both.
Correct.
You're
You're not a
one
citizen.
or the other, right?
Right.
You're one or the other. I'm not going to break that down. Well, you go do some research, everybody. Look up sovereign and look up citizen. And by the way, look it up in U.S. code. Look up the word citizen in the U.S. code. You'll find that very interesting.
Right.
But these juries, can start with local corruption cases, possibly, Sheriff Mack. Maybe they could look into the judicial misconduct, or maybe they could look into CPS abuse or election fraud. I've been to some where they're demanding, I've been to some county commission meetings where they're demanding to have investigations and they shut the mics off. They called the sheriff in and the sheriff escorts you out. This is in Palm Beach County, which, that sheriff's corrupt, whatever. So, do you think that, overall then that this DOJ collapse is maybe divine providence exposing a system that's basically been unjust for decades? And
But right there, right there, Ann, Pam Bondi is, I think, a victim of the brainwashing within the system that she was so much a part of for the last 20,
Possibly.
30 years. I think she's a victim of it. She doesn't understand the reality of her own brainwashing and working inside government for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of sheriffs are victims of that same thing. Oh, we're just here to go after drug. We're here to kick in doors and stop all the drug dealers and investigate all these crimes. Well, some of that might apply to your job, but along the way, they lost the significance of their oath of office and the significance of their position. And that is to uphold and defend the Constitution and thus protect the civil rights of every American inside their jurisdictional boundaries.
Right.
And so you put up a photo a little while ago. Every person in America should read that book. Every sheriff should read that, but every citizen first. It's only 50 pages, folks.
Yeah.
That is on Amazon, and it's also at my website. Order those. They're only like $10. This is the most amazing book.
Yeah, and the amount of information that you possess rattling around that big brain of yours is staggering. And people can join the CSPOA, the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association, on your website. Every American is we the people, we're the government. We should be part of the solution and part of the law enforcement. Finally, Sheriff Mack, do you believe we're witnessing the end of the federal justice monopoly and the rebirth of people's law at this juncture in time?
No.
No?
No, I don't. I hope so, but I don't think it's happening enough. And I think that government's too arrogant and too selfish and too brainwashed, and they're too entrenched in the system. And who in the system is going to be the first to stand up and say, we've been wrong and we need to get this back to the people? Every campaign, every election year, you hear, I'm going to get the government back to the people. I'm going to give the country back to the people. They never do it. And the people don't understand it enough either. And so I just don't feel we're there. I would give it. That's what I've been fighting for 28 years, 35 years since I first was converted to the Constitution as a rookie cop. I get blasted for this. You get blasted for this.
I know.
And the people, the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ADL and the Politico.
They love to write articles about us and put us on lists.
And the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
They're all really good at blasting
Uniparty.
anyone who wants to bring back the Constitution
That's
as
right.
the supreme law of the land.
That's right.
So no, I don't think we've had that much success yet. I could count a lot of sheriffs that have done this, but it's not nearly enough, Ann.
I agree.
It's not enough.
I agree.
And
Well,
sheriffs are starting to believe the crap.
I know that's the problem. We are dealing with information war at the most sophisticated and highest levels.
Yep.
And a lot of this information war is coming from outside this country, designed to completely upend us and turn us inside out. It's been funded by NGOs around the world, but specifically using taxpayer money. We know USA did a lot of that funding, and we were paying for it by having to pay the interest on the money the Federal Reserve printed to fund these NGOs. It's just under agency government. It's just disgusting what our government has become. It's nothing at all that our founding fathers designed. We don't resemble ourselves from 250 years ago, yet there's few of us that are out here speaking and, we're beating our head into the wall, trying to get it out. And you'll have people say, oh, but Ann, things are different today. Yeah, but they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be different. The foundation should be the same. We could have the tech and all this other cool stuff and drive fancy cars and whatever, but foundationally we have lost our way. And, God is going to judge for that. That I feel certain of. But taking God out of that statement, we are going to be judged because our republic is collapsing before our very eyes. And it's really a shame to see what we're becoming, especially when you start, stealing elections and putting people like Mandami in New York. And this is the mentality of the people that vote him in. Sheriff Mack, I've got to run here, but I certainly appreciate you coming in and having this conversation. I'm going to have you back on more often because we're going to drill down on stuff that I think broadly we touched on today, but we can get very specific, and we're going to start to talk about process and how-tos, because people like to hear this stuff, but then they feel frustrated because they want to, okay, what do I do? So we're going to come back and have you on if you're okay with that.
Oh, and you're absolutely amazing. I'd come back to be on your show anytime.
Well, thank you, Sheriff Mack. I appreciate it. And I'll send you that video as soon as we're off.
Please do. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Great deal. Wow. I mean, Sheriff Mack, when it comes to somebody who understands the Constitution and the scope in which he has authority as an elected sheriff, meaning we chose him, tremendous. And he is not afraid to speak truth to power. He has reminded us today something very simple, and it's yet revolutionary in the context of today's time, that the Constitution isn't dead. It might be dormant. It might be waiting for courageous Americans to awaken it. But I believe we can find those courageous Americans, because the DOJ, while it's losing its lawyers, what's really causing it to die off is the system that it is built on. In other words, the deception and the political control that has just plagued our Department of Justice and really all of our agencies. And perhaps that's exactly what must be happening for something else greater to rise, a return to constitutional justice. Sheriff Mack's own victory at the Supreme Court proved that local authority, backed by the 10th Amendment, our state's sovereignty, isn't a theory. It's a law of the land. The same principle that freed our sheriffs from unlawful federal mandates now stands ready to free the people themselves. The founders placed the grand jury power directly into the hands of the citizens just for moments like this, when official justice breaks down and the people must once again hold power to account. Citizen grand juries aren't radical. They are restorative. They are the lawful heartbeat of a self-governing nation. As Sheriff Mack often teaches, liberty doesn't survive by permission. It endures by assertion. So, as America watches the DOJ falter, let us remember, we don't need permission to do what is right. We need only the courage to act under the law of God and the law of the land. The Department of Justice may be collapsing, but the spirit of justice is alive and well in the hearts of we the people. And that, my friends, is how a republic is reborn. If you're watching at home, please ask your sheriff and your state leaders for a one-page county peace plan and a published training calendar. If they've got one, great. If they don't, now you know what to ask for. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Ann Vandersteel. This is about local action to gain and garner national action, in the words of General Michael Flynn. Do it lawfully to keep the peace. Until next time, stay frosty, everybody. Have a good one. This election is filled with promises of tax cuts that will go nowhere. But don't let this excess noise blind you to what's really at stake, your retirement. As economic volatility continues to grow, few are talking about the consequence that could ripple through your retirement savings. Many wealthy investors have started preparing for the shockwave ahead. Have you? If you have $50,000 or more saved for retirement, click the link below or call 1-888-782-9064 and secure your free guide to gold IRAs from Augusta Precious Metals. Again, click the link below or call 1-888-782-9064.